Our next guest says the results of the report out today actually sound familiar. She wrote about the meltdown in her own book, All the Devils Are Here. Bloomberg contributing editor Bethany McLean joins us now from Los Angeles. So Bethany, your book's a bestseller. Do you think the FCIC is going to have one too?
It's really hard for me to say. I'm sure they have lots of information and lots of juicy tidbits from emails and other documents that we didn't have, and writing style is up to the beholder, or the reader in this case.
Yeah, we'll leave that to the editors. But when it comes to the blame game surrounding this, I mean, that's where the attention seems focused. There's a split along partisan lines as to the conclusions being drawn here. What's the difference, in your opinion, in these parties? I mean, do they really have different viewpoints?
Yep. Well, let's start with the two biggest dissents, which are the mainstream report and then the majority Republican dissent. And those sound to me more like shadings than they do like a huge violent disagreement. It sounds like the report itself may cast more blame on Wall Street greed and on deregulation, whereas the dissent is more no one is to blame. This was policy. These were things we couldn't have seen coming. This happened all over the globe. More of a kind of bubbles happen attitude. And then the third dissent by Peter Wallison, he's made no secret of his views. He's written multiple editorials in the Wall Street Journal saying that this was all the fault of government affordable housing policy. So that's its own separate thing.
You think the fact that Wallison stands alone discredits that viewpoint?
I certainly think it does, especially since the other three Republican commissioners had originally looked like they were allied with his dissent, and now they broke ranks. And frankly, I think it should. I think government affordable housing policy is one of the factors, but it's not the only one. And to narrow the blame down to that is as wrong as it is to narrow it down to Wall Street greed. Mm-hmm. This was a crisis that involved many actors, and any attempt to oversimplify it, I think, is really dangerous and a discredit to history.
Well, I mean, it seems almost unfair to simplify it to who's to blame, but if there aren't real, not necessarily villains, but causes, then how do you come up with solutions? I mean, is there anything that you work from here?
Well, there certainly are causes, and I think you can take away a few lessons from this, or a few questions about the future. And one big one to me is on the whole notion of Wall Street innovation. We all tend to think innovation is always a good thing. Well, is it? And I think there should be some questions around super sophisticated, complicated financial securities in the future as to what they actually do. Mm-hmm. I hope this teaches regulators a little more skepticism. There is no question that part of this was regulators' failure to regulate and failure to use the policy the powers they had, and you'd hope that this is a lesson about that, and you'd also hope that this teaches a lesson about just how interconnected the world we live in is. For so long, people didn't believe that toxic mortgage-backed securities could really cause a financial crisis, but in this day and age where products can proliferate in all these unseen ways, it's a pretty scary thing.
But, I don't know what motivated you to write your book, but presumably, narrating history. What's the point of this? If Dodd-Frank is the regulation that's supposed to help us avoid another crisis, what does the final results of the analysis now? What do they mean?
Well, I think Dodd-Frank is still being implemented, and so some of the points in the FCIC report could change the way those rules are implemented, could give either side more arguing power. So I think that's important. But I think it's a question of attitude. To me, if you look back and you understand what went wrong and where people made their mistakes, then they are, you'd hope, easier to avoid in the future. Mm-hmm. And I say that with a little bit of skepticism, because these financial crises or financial blow-ups we've had seem to come with such regularity that I'm not sure the lessons that are there to be learned are ever learned, but you'd hope that would be the case.
You would hope. Thank you very much. Bethany McLean joining us from LA. Always good to talk to you.